Gypsy Rose Blanchard can't pay her rent. It appears now that Gypsy Rose's show has ended and she is no longer getting a check from Lifetime. She's going broke.
I technically only have like $50 in my account. Being like, oh my God, am I going to have to, ask my dad for money this month?
I want to give my thoughts on why Gypsy Rose is selling all of her stuff, but I don't think it's just because she's broke. I also don't think it's just because of a snow habit. I think that the network may be going after her.
The most shocking revelation in the Gypsy Rose Blanchard saga right now is not about her past crimes, her time behind bars, or even the controversial media frenzy that followed her release. It is the fact that a woman who once left prison with the promise of millions of dollars in net worth, multiple lucrative media deals, and a platform of nearly 10 million followers is now being exposed for allegedly failing to pay her rent, facing warnings from her landlord and standing on the edge of eviction with her infant daughter and husband by her side. A disgraceful collapse that forces us to question not only her judgment, but also the dangerous myth of fast burn celebrity redemption in the age of TikTok. This is not a minor slip in reputation. This is a moment that signals complete financial and personal instability. A moment where a figure once positioned as a savior, a heroine of her own narrative, is instead being accused of deception once again. Not about a murder this time, but about something more mundane and yet more corrosive. Whether she truly owns the house she claimed was hers, whether she has squandered the fortune she was given, and whether her public has been manipulated into believing a storybook ending that never really existed. The case before us is the case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, from millionaire to possible evictee. Gypsy Rose was once known to the world as the face of one of the most disturbing cases of medical child abuse and murder in recent American history. Raised by her mother Dee Dee Blanchard in a prison of fabricated illness, unnecessary surgeries, and forced wheelchairs, Gypsy's eventual involvement in her mother's killing made her a household name, a subject of documentaries, dramatizations, and viral fascination. When she was released from prison in late 2023, the internet, especially TikTok, rallied around her. She gained followers in millions. She was portrayed as someone who had suffered enough, who was now ready to leave the life stolen from her. She was given interviews, podcast spots, and lifetime projects. She was, in short, rebranded from convicted conspirator to tragic heroine. But the charges that now fall at her feet are not criminal in the legal sense. They are moral, cultural, and reputational. She stands accused of manipulation by painting an image of financial stability and home ownership that now seems to have been false. Sympathy scams by allegedly tying financial bills to her role as a struggling mother, a card that audiences have seen her play before.
Technically only have like $50 in my account. Being like, oh my God, am I going to have to, ask my dad for money this month?
Exposing her child to instability by dragging her daughter into a life clouded with financial chaos and online scrutiny. Enabling dysfunction by choosing a partner unable or unwilling to carry the financial weight, leaving her family in peril. This case is not about her crime from years ago. It is about a crime of wasted opportunity, of the rapid collapse of someone handed a rare second chance, and of the influencer culture that enabled her rise while ignoring the warning signs of her fall. Exhibit A. According to TikTok creator Ethan, who claims to have sources close to Gypsy's landlord, the situation is far more serious than a single late payment. It is a pattern of repeated failure to meet rent obligations that has now placed Gypsy in the crosshairs of potential eviction. He explains in detail. Gypsy hasn't been doing well with paying up in time, and even this month, she hadn't yet made her payments. The landlord had already issued her a warning about late payments, and now she's done it again. His words painted a picture of a tenant who is no longer viewed as reliable, someone whose promises of stability to her landlord echo the same promises she gave to her audience, but now ring hollow.
Gypsy Rose Blanchard can't pay her rent. It appears now that Gypsy Rose's show has ended and she is no longer getting a check from Lifetime. She's going broke. Now, I have a source who is telling me that Gypsy Rose has not yet paid her rent this month, and the landlord isn't happy. Through this source, close to the landlord, I hear that Gypsy Rose is living in a house right outside of New Orleans. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, $2,500 a month. However, she may need to consider downsizing because this isn't the first time Gypsy has been late on the rent. According to my source close to the landlord of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, the landlord has warned her before about being late on the rent. However, today, the rent is still unpaid and she is not responding to her landlord about paying it. Now, all of this comes as Ken Urker apparently doesn't have a job still. And Gypsy Rose, however, was the primary breadwinner in the family because even if he did work as a busboy at a restaurant, that would not pay for the $2,500 a month rent for their 3-bedroom home. Is Gypsy Rose close to financial disaster now that she is no longer getting paid by Lifetime and has exhibited her poor money management skills? And do you think her landlord will have enough and evict her for continuously being late on the rent?
The property at the center of this controversy is a modest 3-bedroom, 2-bath home just outside New Orleans with a monthly rent of roughly $2,500. This is not a luxury mansion with sprawling lawns nor a celebrity compound shielded by gates. It is a standard suburban rental, the type of house that many ordinary families aspire to, and yet the woman once believed to walk free with millions in her account cannot keep pace with this relatively modest financial responsibility. Why this matters extends beyond overdue payments. Gypsy had previously suggested to her followers that this was her house, that she had bought it outright, and in doing so, crafted a narrative of permanence, independence, and triumph over her tragic past. If, as the allegations strongly imply, the property was never purchased but instead leased, possibly even through arrangements made by Lifetime during her major deals, then the narrative unravels completely. What the public thought was proof of her redemption may in fact have been nothing more than another performance staged for the camera. The reflection here becomes unavoidable. A woman, once convicted of conspiring in her mother's murder, is now accused of conspiring in a different way, by carefully constructing an image of security and stability while privately battling mounting financial instability, once again blurring the line between performance and truth. Exhibit B. When Gypsy left prison, her reported net worth was nearly $3 million. A figure splashed across headlines and repeated by outlets eager to portray her as financially secure and poised to live a new chapter. She had the Lifetime show that brought in revenue, sponsorships with brands fascinated by her name recognition, paid speaking opportunities, and a massive online following that promised streams of monetization through TikTok, Instagram, and other platforms.
This is so wild to me. Do you guys see what her net worth is? Like, you had somebody do the unthinkable to your mom. You serve time, you take a plea deal, you get out in 10 years, you're now out within the first, couple months of getting out, maybe 6 months, you were knocked up. And the fact, how does that happen? How is she worth $3 million? Does anybody know?
And yet the pressing question remains, how did someone go from nearly $3 million to struggling with a $2,500 rent payment in less than a year? The warning signs of reckless financial behavior were visible almost immediately. Gypsy herself admitted to spending $500 on bleaching her hair simply for the experience, knowing full well she would still end up paying again at a salon to correct it. This is not an isolated splurge, but a reflection of her approach. Money as a toy, not a tool. She pursued expensive cosmetic procedures, nose surgery, dental work, and other transformations that quickly drained resources while offering only temporary satisfaction, gestures that revealed more about her insecurities than about her sustainable life plan. Fast forward, and the image of stability has crumbled. Instead of building businesses, saving for her family, or investing wisely, Gypsy is now resorting to piecemeal efforts to generate income. She is selling remnants of her media appearances, clothing from Lifetime's second season, baby items no longer needed, and even her own art pieces under the brand name Blown Beauty Art.
I want to give my thoughts on why Gypsy Rose is selling all of her stuff, but I don't think it's just because she's broke. I also don't think it's just because of a snow habit. I think that the network may be going after her. And here's what I mean. When she wrote a letter to TMZ, she broke her NDA. And yes, that is serious. But because of what she told TMZ, she caused the network to lose money. A financial loss due to her being negligent has serious legal repercussions. And whenever she gave that information to TMZ, the network had already paid for seats at the game. And just Gypsy seats alone were $5,000. But they were going to need seats for the sound crew, they were going to need seats for the camera crew, and extras as well as directors, which was likely a lot of money. But they had also booked hotel rooms near there that night for the crew. But again, they had to go and stay somewhere else. And giving the high caliber event in that area that weekend, I doubt a lot of the hotels around there were giving refunds for cancellations. So my theory is the network is going after her for the funds that they lost in that situation.
Fans have not yet been impressed, many describing the paintings as overpriced, underwhelming, and emblematic of a desperate attempt to turn scrapes of her life into quick cash. What makes this especially tragic is the way she systematically dismantled her most powerful revenue streams. Deactivating her TikTok account with 9 million followers was akin to shutting the doors of her most valuable storefront. She has no book contract in production, no show currently airing, and no steady media deals on the horizon. In essence, Gypsy is cashing out her past in a series of yard sale tactics instead of building a future. The lesson here is brutal but clear. She was handed an extraordinary opportunity to transform her life into one of sustainable stability, but through short-term gratification, reckless overspending, and impulsive decision-making, she squandered what could have been a lasting foundation for herself and her daughter. Exhibit C. Ken, her husband, was portrayed as her rock, her partner who was supposed to present stability and support in this new chapter of her life. But according to multiple online commentators and observers who follow this story closely, Ken does not appear to have a stable or well-paying job, and in fact, some speculate he may not have formal employment at all, leaving serious questions about how he contributes financially to their household. What this means in practice is stark. The $2,500 rent, the utilities, the groceries, the baby supplies, medical needs, and every other expense necessary for survival all fall squarely back onto Gypsy, who is already showing signs of being overwhelmed. Instead of the shared burden of a partnership, this has become an arrangement where one partner carries nearly everything and the other fades into the background, raising doubts about whether this marriage was built on genuine support or on wishful thinking. This is not just a case of a husband failing to provide. It highlights a pattern Gypsy has fallen into repeatedly, attaching herself to men who do not elevate her circumstances, but instead deepen her instability. From her earlier fiancé, who did little to strengthen her footing, to her current husband, who seems equally unable to keep them afloat, Gypsy's choices in partners reflect a tragic cycle of seeking safety in relationships that instead drain her resources and energy. The reflection here becomes unavoidable and painful. Her daughter, innocent in all of this, is now being raised in a household where financial tension shimmers constantly, where the specter of eviction hangs in the air, and where child protective services have already been rumored to hover nearby. This is not the narrative of survival and triumph Gypsy wanted the world to believe. It is, instead, the continuation of cycles repeating, dysfunction resurfacing, and instability threatening to consume yet another. The fallout is not theatrical. It is already unfolding in ways that feel like a sentencing carried out in real time, rather than in some distant future. Gypsy's landlord has reportedly issued repeated warnings, making it clear that patience is wearing thin. If she fails to meet her rent obligations again, eviction could become a reality. Such an outcome would not only strip her family of shelter, but also potentially reignite CPS involvement, since instability of housing is one of the most glaring red flags for child welfare authorities, raising urgent questions about her ability to provide a safe environment for her daughter. Her desperate attempts online to generate money, whether by selling baby items, auctioning memorabilia, or pushing her so called artwork, are consistently failing to gain traction. Each failed attempt brings with it a storm of backlash, accusations that she is overpricing goods, complaints that her products are poor in quality, and whispers across TikTok that she is once again falling back into the pattern of begging dressed up as entrepreneurship. The collapse of her brand is visible to anyone watching. The once celebrated narrative of Gypsy is free has now curled into the very public spectacle of financial desperation and spiraling instability. And this is not merely a matter of reputation. It is the erosion of trust, the drying up of opportunities, and the swift reversal of public sympathy. In short, the sentence is already being served. Reputational decline, financial freefall, the looming shadow of eviction, and an audience that no longer pities but criticizes, leaving Gypsy with fewer defenders and fewer lifelines by the day. Judge's analysis. This case is not just about Gypsy Rose. It is about the culture that created her, the ecosystem of online platforms, audiences, and media outlets that elevated her from an ex-convict to a viral redemption figure overnight without ever teaching her how to build a sustainable future. Influencer culture thrives on trauma monetization. Gypsy's story was packaged and sold as a transformation from tragedy to triumph, and millions bought in without questioning what came next. But this culture does not equip its stars with financial literacy, stability, or long-term planning. It thrives on performance, on quick cash infusions, on constant reinvention to keep the audience entertained, even when the cost is personal ruin. We see the same patterns replicated everywhere. TikTok moms exposing their children's private moments for engagement. Influencers staging emotional breakdowns because misery drives clicks. Families broadcasting dysfunction as if it were a business model. The algorithm rewards spectacle, not stability, clicks over care, controversy over consistency. Gypsy Rose is simply the most high profile example of this broader sickness. When your brand is built on pain, you are forced to keep producing pain in order to maintain relevance. And when the audience inevitably grows tired, what remains is not security, but only bills, backlash, and the haunting ghosts of performances that once drew sympathy but now inspire criticism. The verdict. Based on the exhibits, the verdict is this. Gypsy Rose Blanchard squandered her second chance. She manipulated narratives of home ownership and stability. She wasted financial windfalls on vanity and short-term indulgences. She failed to secure a safe, lasting environment for her child. The court of public opinion finds her guilty, not of crime, but of failing the very redemption story she was gifted. But in this courtroom, the jury is not 12 strangers. It is you. You have had the exhibits. You have seen the fallout. Now, you must deliver your verdict. Is Gypsy simply unlucky, a victim of a harsh world and poor support systems? Or is she guilty of deception, manipulation, and reckless choices that have endangered her family yet again? Drop your verdict in the comments below, because in the court of TikTok, the jury is always watching.